Welcome along, everybody, to the Donington Decider, the final round of the 2022 Intelligent Money British GT Championship. We have a 2-hour race coming up later on. We've got a GT3 and a GT4 championship yet to be decided. And the first order of the day is the 15-minute morning warm-up session. The cars queuing up in the pit lane on a damp circuit, ready to head out onto the circuit for the final time before the 2-hour championship decider. It's the 30th anniversary of the British GT Championship. It's also the 20th year of our series sponsor, Intelligent Money. We thank them once again for their continued support of the championship. And Bryn Lucas is down in the pit lane right now with Nick Burrows from Intelligent Money, who I'm sure is enjoying himself in the autumnal sunshine, Bryn.
Autumnal sunshine, you got that bang on. The track is really greasy, Andy, just FYI, especially here in the pits. A few of the cars are lining up. Over my shoulder, Ian Loggey sitting in the car. He's well, he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders right now. As you say, Nick Burrows is with me from Intelligent Money. 30th year anniversary for the British GT this year, 20th year of Intelligent Money Association. So it's been going on for a long time, 2 more years on the deal, and it comes down to another epic Donington decider.
Yeah, it's great to be here today with the sun out and it all to be played for on the track today. So after yesterday's quali, obviously mixed it up a bit, made it a little bit interesting. It'll be great to see what happens out on the track today.
Tell me, why is it that Intelligent Money have stuck their colours to the mast for so many years?
A day like today, a track like this, the noise and the stuff going on, what's not to like? It's a big adrenaline day, great place for our clients to come and spend some time out. And I think motor racing wise, this is one of the ones where you can get close to the action and feel you're part of it. And that's the feedback we get from the people we bring down to the track all the time. So they love it and so do we.
Well, Nick, close to the action. We're in the pits. You can't get much closer. The cars are flying past now. This is going to be an epic one. I know you want to go and watch some hospitality, so I'll let you go and do that. Andy, back to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Bryn. Yeah, great atmosphere here at a British GT event. There always is, but there's just something special about the final round of the championship, traditionally held here at Donington Park. We've had a couple of exceptions to that. But this is the spiritual home, really, of the final round of the championship. And it's this man who is on the verge of doing something he's been trying to do for an awfully long time. Ian Loggey, the nearly man of British GT over recent years, championship runner-up in 2021, came within 1 position of winning the championship here last year. And he arrives here this time with a reasonably healthy championship lead, which he's looking to defend during the 2-hour race later on. And we've already met Bryn Lucas down in the pit lane. He'll be digging out all of the stories throughout this session and the 2 hours of racing later on. Andy McEwen up here in the commentary box as usual. Delighted to be joined this time, for the first time though, by Harry Benjamin, who got his first taste of British GT yesterday in qualifying and hasn't stopped talking about it since, because there was an awful lot to talk about, Harry.
There really was. It's brilliant to be here for the final round for this British GT season, and what a qualifying session that was yesterday. Well, what a several qualifying sessions that was yesterday. The weather really doing its bit to spice things up. You talk about Ian Loggey coming in with this lead that he's got, 24.5 points to try and seal this championship, but he's got work to do later on. I think he starts it down in 11th, sharing that car with Jules Gounon, so he's got an excellent pro alongside him, but of course it'll be Ian Loggey who'll take the start, so crucial to try and claw his way through the field. And it's the same across GT3 and GT4 as well, so we're going to see some fight backs later on. And with the tricky conditions out there at the track at the moment, grip levels rising all the time, this warm-up is going to be crucial to try and get yourself bedded in.
Yeah, the story of that qualifying session, for those who didn't join us yesterday, first of all, where were you? Because it was a very, very exciting hour of qualifying. But the story of that was one of weather, really, because the rain came just as qualifying started. So a handful of GT3 AM drivers managed to set a qualifying time, just over half the field. The other half had not set a time on slick, so when it rained, they were sent out on a slippery circuit on wet tyres and had no hope, ultimately, of challenging for pole position. Now, within the group of cars who had no hope of challenging for pole position, you found all 4 of our GT3 championship contenders, because there are 4 teams who mathematically could still wrap up the overall GT3 title. Ian Loggey, we've mentioned, the championship leader. Adam Ballon and Sandy Mitchell for Barwell Motorsport are second, and then it's sort of a long shot, but technically James Cottingham and Lewis Williamson of 2C's Motorsport and Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton from Enduro Motorsport are also in title contention. none of those 4 cars qualified well because of being caught out by the weather. So they will all start towards the back of the field, basically. At the front of the field, though, will be this car. It is the older spec Mercedes AMG GT3 of Richard and Sam Neary. It's Richard at the wheel in the opening portion of this warm-up session, as will be the case for the start of the race. And they took their most recent win here at Donington in the summer last year, where Richard came from something like 9th on the grid to the lead within the first half a lap. He's got a bit less overtaking to do this time, Harry.
He certainly has done. It's going to be so crucial, isn't it, this start later on, because it's so 29 GT cars in the field, all running down to turn 1 at
Recipe
Redgate.
for disaster, isn't it?
Recipe for absolute drama, I think. It's going to be fascinating. Just 11 minutes left of this short warm-up, though, and going to be crucial, really, just to, as we mentioned earlier, trying to get a bed in, but for both drivers, really, because the AM drivers are going to be the ones that are starting the race. So the conditions are obviously going to change. We don't get going until around about 12:30 local time. So it's going to get a little bit warmer, although we are in the autumnal season here in the UK. So it's going to be fairly chilly, but to get your AM driver up to speed early doors is going to be absolutely crucial.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we're not expecting any more rain. That doesn't mean it won't rain, but we're not expecting any more rain before the race starts. So in theory, the track should be dry. I know, I shouldn't have said that. Well, you know, we'll try and spice things up as much as we can. And a bit of rain at the start of the race would certainly spice things up. But whether it's wet or dry, there is real jeopardy here for Ian Logie, because the one place he didn't want to be starting was in the middle of the grid. The front of the grid, great. Even the back of the grid isn't the end of the world, because you can sort of hang back and stay out of trouble. He is right in the danger zone, so to speak. So too are his championship rivals. They're all starting back there, but Logie in particular, he will be taking the start of the race later on today from 11th on the grid, 1 place behind Barwell Motorsport, who are realistically his big championship rivals, the number 77 Lamborghini. Those two are going to be busy fighting each other and busy trying to move their way through the pack, and also trying to avoid contact.
Yeah, and they're just behind Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton for the SRO Motorsport team, who go from 9th. Now, they are still in it, technically. They're a little bit further back, though, 4th in the championship, but still all to play for them. So at 9th, 10th, and 11th is going to be absolutely spicy. So look out for that mid-pack coming up in the race later this afternoon.
Absolutely. Just behind them, by the way, will be this car. It's great to see this car back on the grid. The Beachdean Aston Martin. Andrew Howard making a very, very welcome return to the championship. We have seen him racing earlier on this year, but not in this car. He was super subbing for somebody else, but he's back now in his familiar colours with the familiar Aston Martin. This is a car that I will never tire of seeing on the grid. We don't have favourites, of course, but the Aston Martin might be my favourite looking car on the grid. It's a great car, sounds fantastic, and often does go well here at Donington Park. So fantastic to have Beachdean back, and we hope to see more of Andrew next season. He's sharing that car, by the way, with Lewis Proctor, who normally would be driving alongside his father Stuart in that McLaren, actually the Greystone GT McLaren, but he has moved over into the Aston Martin for this weekend. Now, speaking of Aston Martins, Harry, GT4 sees an Aston Martin at the top of the points. It is this one of Matt Topham and Darren Turner, but, and I think I've heard this story somewhere else today, they are not starting at the front of the grid, are they? They had problems of their own yesterday.
No, well, along with everybody else, it seems like big problems for them, trying to get up to speed, and certainly a lot of time in the pit lane as well for that Aston Martin, but work to do for them too, trying to claw their way up from 12th on the GT4 grid, sharing that car with Darren Turner, of course, so he's got a mightily strong pro alongside him, but Matt out there at the moment in that Aston Martin, I think he'll be slightly pleased with the conditions today. It seems a lot more stable. I have just had a double check on the weather. Sunshine all throughout the day. You'll be pleased to hear, and I'm sure Matt will be pleased to hear as well. But brilliant to have a couple of Aston Martins there represented across this GT3 and GT4 grid. But Matt Topham, yeah, with work to do. His gap at the top at the moment, 12.5 points to Richard Williams and Seddon Fielding in the Stella Motorsport Audi. And then it's another couple of points back to Josh Miller and Jamie Day. Now, they actually had a really good qualifying yesterday. They snuck up there right in the closing stages of GT4 qualifying to get up into 4th in their Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT4. So they'll start from 4th, but it's Richard Williams and Seddon Fielding with, well, the head start really, going from 2nd, but of course, we have success penalties to come as well.
Yes, and they will have a success penalty with Stella Motorsport because they finished 2nd last time out at Brands Hatch, where, of course, Newbridge won. So they both have success penalties to serve. But yes, you're absolutely right. Matt Topham and Darren Turner, they've got that 12.5 point lead. That sounds great. it isn't really a lot, because should Stella win, remember they are starting on the front row, then Topham and Turner would have to finish second in the class in order to retain the championship. Third or lower with a win for the Audi would give Stella the championship. So it is all to play for in GT4, and as you said, are racing there to pick up the pieces, and they don't have a success penalty, unlike the two that they're fighting. So it's going to be a very exciting race. It's going to be a complicated race, trying to keep track of that and success penalties and driver changes, perhaps tyre changes as well if it doesn't dry out, and then throw in the points calculations too. And it's going to be a busy couple of hours. The race kicking off at 1 o'clock later on, but we'll have live build-up here from Donington Park from 12:30 onwards. Riding on board then here with Adam Ballon in the number 72 Lamborghini, and this car it looked very stable in the dry yesterday. In the wet during qualifying though, it looked rather twitchy. Be interested to see whether they've managed to improve the wet weather handling, but of course, Harry, the race is not expected to be wet, so in a way anything they're learning in this 15-minute warm-up session is unlikely to be much use to them.
No, that's true. I suppose it's just trying to get warmed up, quite literally, both car and driver. He slides down the inside into the hairpin, a little foreshadow there of perhaps what's to come throughout the race. But these two, Ballon and Sandy Mitchell, of course, were very vocal yesterday during qualifying in their sort of strategy that we're going to try and work out in terms of tyres, where they're going to go full of wets, where they're going to stick on the slicks. And they were one of the early runners in the second qualifying session with Sandy Mitchell at the wheel, who took the gamble and went to slicks sort of right in the closing stages of the session just to try and find a couple of more tenths. But it was so tricky yesterday because Sector 1 was dry, Sector 2 was wet, and then Sector 3 was kind of middle of the road. So they made up a huge chunk of time in Sector 1, but then losing time in Sectors 2 and 3. They did manage to scoot themselves up a couple of other positions. But will Ian Logie be regretting? He's now out of the car, so Jules Gounon in that car now, but will be regretting, because I remember right at the start of qualifying yesterday, that car was the last one in there on the jacks with no wheels on.
Yes, they were in no hurry to get on the track, and that ultimately is what cost them. If they'd have got out a minute sooner, they would have set a time in the dry before the rain came along. But Ian, right now, watching along in the pit lane as his co-driver Jules Gounon pilots the car around the circuit. We missed Jules at Brands Hatch last time after a back injury. Gounon cannot win the championship because he hasn't done every round, which is why Ian Logie stands alone at the top of the GT3 championship, and he stands not alone in the garage, chatting away there with the team, looking nice and relaxed. Adam Ballon and Sandy Mitchell, his nearest rivals for the championship. Now, if they win, 5th place or better is enough for Logie. So as long as he's in the top 5 in the race, he will be champion regardless. James Cottingham and Lewis Williamson with Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton have a mathematical chance. There are 37.5 points available for a win today, and as you can see, they are just within that bracket, but they do realistically need to be winning the race and hoping that Logie and indeed Barwell have some problems. GT4 battling is going to be very exciting when we get into the race later on. This car will be starting from the front row. It was a very close GT4 qualifying session yesterday, wasn't it? Because they had slightly more stable conditions. They were all out on slick tyres pretty much from the get-go, and this car looked good in both of those sessions, didn't it?
Yes, there wasn't a big 10-second gap like there was between, I think, 6th place and 7th place, or round about the mid-pack there in GT3 when the dry running turned into a bit of a downpour. But it's certainly going to be tough out there. GT4 overall driver standings, you can see there, as we said, Matt Topham, Darren Turner topping that, 154 points. But it's only a 12.5 point gap to Williams and Fielding, and Seddon Fielding looking very strong in that Audi, it has to be said, as we watch on in the number 42 Audi R8, making its way through the chicane now. We go on board. But and then Miller and Day, good qualifying from them yesterday, and Brown and Burns a little bit further back, but not out of it completely. 101 points to their name. So 4 drivers, 4 teams at the top of the GT4 standings, all in with a shout of taking home that crown later this afternoon. Yeah,
Brown and Burns could certainly move up into 3rd place in the championship. They'll struggle to do more than that, but
yes,
yeah,
right.
three-way fight for the championship, and well, it's been impossible to call GT4 all season long because the racing's been really close, but the variety of car up there as well. It's a great advert for balance and performance, which racing drivers like to have a whinge and a moan about, but it really, really works. We have Aston Martins, McLarens, Porsches, BMWs, the Ford Mustang, the Ginetta's been getting stronger as the year's gone on as well, and as you can see, we've got the Mercedes AMG GT4 back out as well this weekend. Motus One Racing, Ed McDermott and Michael Broadhurst, the car just behind Darren Turner, making a welcome return to the Series 2. That car involved in a nasty shunt in practice at Brands Hatch last time out, and they did get out for the race, but it didn't make it to the flag, unfortunately. So hoping to see a bit more of them. Worth pointing out, though, that Mercedes, one of 6 cars entered into the race today who will not be eligible for championship points because they're race-by-race entries. Again, we'll get into that a bit later on once we break the abacus out in the race. It might be sunny and look relatively warm outside. It is not that hot, I can tell you. There is
heaters on.
Yeah, absolutely. A scrum to get close to the heater. I know where I'm heading after this session, put it that way. Those heaters do a brilliant job of keeping everyone nice and warm. Yes, the team's grateful, I think, to be inside in the warm. It's certainly going to be warm inside the cars, though. No matter how cold it is outside, Harry, it really, really racks up the temperature inside the cockpit.
It really does, but it's been lovely and pleasant, actually, bar the rain. Jules Gounon fastest at the moment, though, in warm-up 1:38.6 to his name. Williamson has just got up there as well, 1:39.6. Nothing, well, about a second between the top 2 at the moment, and then comes Neary, Walker and Proctor at the top 5 currently in this warm-up session in the final minute, really. And it's not a lot of time when you're sharing the car, I suppose 15 minutes, trying to do an equal split, I suppose, or if you want to give your AM driver a little bit more time to bed in before we get going for the racing. But of course, we're right at the end of the season now, so maybe an element of mistakes might start to creep in ever so slightly. It's been a long season, very tiring, I'm sure. I mean, they're all professional at the end of the day, but mistakes can happen, especially at this tricky Donington Park circuit.
Absolutely, mistakes can happen in the warm-up session, which can write you out of the race altogether. So there is an element of jeopardy going out there in this session at all. Interesting that they're giving Jules Gounon as much driving time as they are. I mean, completely sideways there, through the crater curves, through the old hairpin. You'd think he was sat on his sofa watching TV, he's that relaxed. But they're giving him a big chunk of this warm-up session, whereas normally the AMs would do the majority of the driving. But Jules Gounon, as you can see, coming through the quick right-handers now at the top end of the circuit. Adam McLean's climbing uphill into Coppice Corner. He finds the apex, now finds the traction on the exit of the corner. Little bit of opposite lock, but not a huge amount actually. The car looking reasonably stable. Mercedes-AMG GT3 always has been a good car in the wet, and so Jules Gounon able to keep his relaxed composure as he makes his way around on what will be his final lap of the session.
Love his helmet design as well. Bold and yellow. Very nice, but he's going very quickly around there. Smooth and relaxed is Jules Gounon, renowned GT racer. He's carved out his career very nicely, wrapping up GT World Challenge. He's an endurance winner as well. So to have him alongside, well, the man that's going for the championship, well, I think he's picked well there. Purple middle sector, he's up 0.3 of a second for Jules Gounon. He's already got the fastest time on the board anyway, but looks like he's about to go even faster as well as we ride on board in his Mercedes, looking back at the Frenchman. And we can see now off board in that beautiful liveried pink and navy blue Mercedes. There is his teammate Ian Logie, the man going for the title. With that 24.5-point gap, and Jules Gounon then finding a little bit more time in the final sector as well to go even faster. I think he's been in a 1:37.7 in the end.
He did. Ian Logie looking reasonably calm, but there must be some nerves bubbling away in there. Second fastest, Marcus Clutton, riding on board with him now in SRO Motorsports. This car is under investigation for something to do with the pit entry. The timing screen not telling us any more than that, but that will be something like not coming in before the blend line or something like that, or pit speeding perhaps, although typically come up as a speeding investigation. Anyway, whatever it is, it's going to have to be investigated after the session now, because the session is over. He's still on a flying lap though, pushing on to try and improve his lap time, which he's not doing in the first sector. His second sector time will come up momentarily though, because that ends partway down this exhibition straight behind the Donington Exhibition Centre, and now at 39.2 in the middle sector. He's not slow, but it's not a personal best. He is fighting this car there. Compare and contrast that to riding on board with Jules Gounon. It's a different world.
Jules Gounon, nice and smooth. I think he maybe had one snap coming out of the chicane, but that got all a little bit dicey into the braking zone, didn't it? Excellent car control, you have to say. Yes. He managed to get that stopped and turned in, made it through, still in a straight line and still going.
Well, a former race winner in the Fun Cup Endurance Championship was Marcus Clutton. You have to be a good driver to do well in that championship, and Marcus proving his worth very much, not just there with that moment, but in general. He is one of the most underrated pro drivers in the UK, I think, and his teammate, Morgan Tilbert, one of the most improved AM drivers. He's now regularly one of the fastest within the AM group, and he's only been racing at this level for a couple of years, so really impressive team. And they do mathematically have a chance of the title, although Marcus was telling me yesterday that's not exactly at the forefront of their their mind. So into the pit lane he comes, safely this time, hopefully. No more investigations to be had, and he is second fastest in that morning warm-up session. The times, reasonably irrelevant, they don't count for much, but it was Gunan and Loggy starting their day in the perfect fashion. It could be the day on which Ian Loggy is crowned the British GT champion, and he starts off by going fastest in morning warm-up from Enduro Motorsport second, and then the Fox Motorsport McLaren, they'll be a factor, I think. They're starting third on the grid later, and they're third fastest in warm-up here this morning. Then it's the Walker and Davidson Mercedes in fourth position. That's the new 2Cs Motorsport car with their teammate car, Lewis Williamson, setting the time, I believe, fifth fastest there. The pole sitters, Team ABBA Racing, they're in sixth position, seventh for Paddock's McLaren, and Beachdean Aston Martin in eighth position. The Barwell number 72 car of Ballon and Mitchell in ninth, and Team Rocket RJN's number 2 McLaren rounds out the top 10. Newbridge Motorsport in 11th position, the fastest of the GT4s. So actually both of our Class Championship leaders are at the top of the times in morning warm-up, but that counts for very, very little. It is all about the 2-hour race that comes up later on this afternoon. So a very exciting start to the day, damp conditions, but everyone actually behaving themselves really well. I didn't see a single car off the road in that morning warm-up session, which is particularly important for those who are hoping to fight for a championship today. Ian Loggy, with a handy points advantage, knows that a top 5 finish in the race later on will guarantee him the title, regardless of where his rivals finish. That car ended up fastest in the session. Second fastest was Enduro Motorsport, whilst in GT4, Newbridge Motorsport looking a lot happier today. They went out on the wrong tyres in qualifying yesterday and will be starting deep in the field with only a 12.5 point advantage over the Stella Motorsport Audi, with R Racing's Aston Martin also in championship contention. Team ABBA Racing, though, will start on pole position for the race later on that starts at 1 o'clock here at Donington Park. You won't want to miss it.